I mean, I think after all of the times I've listened to the show now that I would be bored, and I still never do. I still never do it. I hear something new every time. It's incredible.
Because I mean, you've done this show over, is 1,800 right? Over 1,800 performances.
Over 1,600, yeah.
Over 1,600 performances, Paul. My gosh,
a lot.
that's. I don't know what have I done over 1,600 times? Like I'm trying to think what I've done that many times, and you're saying that the show is still interesting to you and you find something new in it every time. I mean, you're contractually obliged to say that, and we're all very thankful for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it's amazing. Like, do you have, looking at, and so those performances were in London's West End. I mean, so that's a storied theatre tradition, and one of the most celebrated shows of all time, and that many performances. You're part of theatre history. And is there a night that kind of jumps out to you where you go, whether it was an event or someone coming up to speak to you after a show or a night of a performance? Is there anything there that kind of jumps out to you in your mind when you?
I mean, in that 4.5-year stint, there were so many moments. I mean, I think the first one would have been the 30th year anniversary performance. Like, that was just insane. We had 30 years of cast come to the theatre and perform in this gala event, and I met Michael Crawford. It was the first night I met Andrew. It was like an insane evening. Sarah Brightman wasn't there, but everyone was. Like, it was just the most insane night. And that for me, when my first ever contract on the West End, I thought that was like, couldn't get better than that. Yeah. And then we had private rehearsals with Andrew, and that was just like wonderful. And obviously I was the last cast to have worked with Hal Prince, before he passed away.
Wow.
And that was incredible for like.
So people that don't know, Hal Prince is a celebrated director, producer, so pivotal in kind of the tradition of musical theatre in both America and London. So a big deal, and just a huge figure in sort of in the field. But go on, sorry.
Yeah. So Hal was the original West Side Story director. I mean, he's done like so many of the most iconic shows, and he was just, it's surreal. I think I'm very lucky, and I think to myself often, Bradley, like my journey and where my road was and what I was doing. I'm very lucky to have done what I did when I did and how I did, because I got to do all these amazing things, meet these incredible people. And, I can honestly tick that off my bucket list, because, sadly, I'll never be able to work with Hal again. But I do know what he wanted from that role and what the tradition of that role was. So I'm very fortunate for that.
Do you think it's now like no matter who plays it on now in the future, many years down the track, once you've clocked off 45,000 performances of Phantom of the Opera, and they sort of finally wheel you off into the fourth sequel that you'll then go start playing in, do you think that then you will kind of be the one that's sort of like, everyone is now taking aside the next and sort of sharing the legacy of these things? Because you're right, talking to Hal Prince, as you said, is kind of, I'm being funny, but it's also, there is this part of history that if you love the art form, and if you love the music or the theatre or the spectacle or being in the audience or performing in the shows, there is this time that kind of feels like it's coming to an end and a new chapter is beginning, but it feels like there is this line sort of being drawn, and you're kind of in the middle of those things,
Yeah, no, it's true. Look, ever since COVID, ever since the passing of Hal and the passing of Gillian Lynn, who was the original choreographer too, things have changed. That's the reality of it. It is, I think, a natural progression. And you know what? I think we also have to be considerate of the times and how a show has to progress for its survival. And this new production that I'm doing for Opera Australia, that is a perfect example of how a show changes with the times. I mean, we have the most spectacle I have ever seen. We have fire, we have pyrotechnics. Like, it's just incredible. And I think, with that re-envisionment of that production, it these kind of productions will keep the legacy that Hal, that Jilly made alive.
Yeah.
That show that I did in London, that the brilliant original production, I still, when I was watching it, was thinking, God, in the 1986, this must have been
This must
just
have blown their minds.
blowing their minds, because it's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so great.
The chandelier comes down in what feels like slow motion now.
Yeah,
It's like,
well, it was a lot more dangerous once upon a time. I'm
Yeah,
sure
that's
people
right.
felt like their heads were going to fall off in the front row, But,
is the union going to let us do this? It'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. You'll be fine. It's chained to the roof. Everything's fine. Everyone calm down. Look,
Yeah.
let's take a quick break. And let's sort of let's talk more about this stuff. I've got a quiz that I'm going to give you to see how well you know Phantom, and then we're going to talk about your stuff. And I got some questions about classical music for you. I need to understand this. We'll take a quick break.